I have put my cognitive science degree to use. I've gone through research studies, interviews with memory champions, quotes from psychologists, all to figure out what are the 3 most effective ways to remember people's names. Also, what do we do if we forget? And why am I so obsessed? Well, it starts back in 2019 with the worst magic show I have ever performed. Listen, while I was a student at Berkeley, I was hired to do a show in Hollywood. And this is a venue that's had audiences like Ben Affleck, Camila Cabello, big deal, and I thought the show went great. So I go to the bathroom after the show and the guy standing next to me recognized me. He says, "Hey, great show." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." And he says, "My friend was on stage as a volunteer. Also, you kept calling her the wrong name. Was that like a comedy bit?" I had called her the wrong name for the whole show, and she had just been too polite to correct me. I have taken a blood oath to never let that happen again, so let's start with strategy number 1, instant repetition. Research from 2017 points to something called the production effect. Basically that when we say something out loud, it way improves our memory recall of that thing versus when we just hear someone else saying it to us. How do we apply it here? Well, if someone tells you their name, if we can find a way to instantly repeat it in the conversation as soon as possible in an organic, natural way, it's gonna way boost how well we remember it. So how do I try to do this? Well, there's the obvious ones, right? You can just say hello, name. Nice to meet you, name. Those are boring, those are pretty lame, but you also have these interesting ones. Oh, that's a really nice name. What does it mean? Where does it come from? How is it spelled? Caveat, you probably can't ask those questions with a name like James, or John, or Dexter, or maybe you can. Oh, Dexter, how's that spelled? Is that D-E-C-K-S-T-O-R-E? But for many names, if you're sincerely interested, asking about the meaning, the origin, all these are building more cues for us to remember that name a little deeper. Or number 3, tried and tested, introduce that person to someone else. Hey, I want you to meet my friend Katie. This is all I had to do to make that 2019 magic show way better, right? The deeper you go into the show, the more people feel like, okay, there's this inertia to correct someone, right? It just feels impolite. It feels like we're way past that point. But right in the moment you hear someone's name, if you instantly repeat it, it is the perfect opportunity to let them correct you, either how you're pronouncing it or how you're saying it. Get things right at the start. But one step deeper is strategy number 2. Absurd association. Let me take you back to 2009. Okay, it is the finals of the German National Memory Championship, and you have Boris Conrad competing, and his mission, crazy, is to remember 195 combinations of names and faces in 15 minutes. So how does this mad lad do it? He uses something called the method of loci, memory palace. This is something we've seen in shows like Sherlock, but there's one added twist that makes his memory palace so effective. Boris points out that for these mental images, absurdity is key. The more absurd something is, the more unusual, weird, even offensive the association you're making between a name and a face, the more crazy it is, the easier and deeper it locks into your memory and the easier it is to recall. How can we do this? How can we emulate who became 2009 memory champion, Boris Conrad? Well, the way I do it is by 3 categories: trait, location, or action. Physical trait is the easiest one. This is Gary with the glasses. This is Ned with the nose, right? Rhyme, alliteration, all these things can make words package a little bit easier and kind of be stored as these easy to remember units in our brain. And this physical trait doesn't need to be something we're staring at them to figure out, right? It can be a piece of clothing, an accessory. Again, things that we can call out in the moment. Hey, John, that's a really crazy piece of jewelry. Where'd you get it? Boom. Now we have a mental association between John and that piece of jewelry. I cannot escape the alliteration. Location, where you met the person, right? Again, when we're meeting a host of people at the same location, maybe it's a party, maybe it's a social event, that's not as helpful. So we want to recognize exactly what part of the room. Are we underneath a chandelier? Are we in a corner? Are we next to a really awkward looking table? And finally, action. This can be either the action the person's doing in the present moment, or this can be their job and action that we associate with them otherwise. Final note on this, you don't need a trait, location, and action for literally everyone, right? Some people's names you just might remember, or some people's names you repeated, heard the origin, the meaning, you just remember, or some people's names you need just one of these to quickly make it something you can recall. Finally, strategy number 3, written reinforcement. Let me show you what I've been doing since 2019. I have these Google Keep notes, which are just lists of names of people that I've met in certain environments. It can be specific events, like when I was on Penn and Teller Fool Us, or it can be entire cities, like when I was living in Los Angeles for a year. And this strategy works for 2 huge reasons. Number 1, the act of writing itself embeds something deeper in our long-term memory, right? But the act of reading those lists later, I scroll through these Google Keep notes, I see just a flash of a name here, or I'm scrolling through a list very intentionally there. Every single one of these moments of reading contributes to retrieval practice. right? It is helping us get used to recalling those names from long-term memory as well. Side note, this is what I do for birthdays. I have an 11:30 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. bright pink reminder that repeats every year for the birthdays of everyone in my life, because I've just accepted that is something I just absolutely suck at. And I've gotten messages from friends, distant professors who say, oh my God, how did you remember this? It meant so much that you reached out. Professor Sweetser, spoiler alert, it was a Google Calendar invite. I hope that didn't take the magic out of it. And there's so many alternatives to the medium of writing, right? Google Keep Notes work really well for me because it's something that's on my phone. It's something that I can type on the go. So the moment I hear a name, I can type it out immediately. That might not work for everyone. So if you want, you can carry around a little notepad, just something like a pocketbook that becomes your name's pocketbook, or contacts, right? Just saving contacts on your phones with a name, a face, or a little modifier that says where you met them, or have a good old-fashioned Rolodex that you keep on your office desk, which just has the list of people or the small pieces of information that you want to remember about them. Finally, the bonus, what can we do when we inevitably forget someone's name? Let me tell you first what you could do, and then I'll tell you what I actually do. You can say, oh my God, I enjoyed this so much. Let me save your contact. They type your name into your phone. Introduce them to someone else whose name you do know, and then in that introduction, they will naturally say their name themselves. And now here's what I actually do. It's called the AAA method. A for apologize, A for ask, and A for and move on. When I forget someone's name, what's helped me most is realizing that this is a thing that happens. This is a thing that people are okay with, and so I just own up to it. I just admit it to the, admit starts with an A. I admit it to the other person with an apology. Hey, honestly, sorry, I forgot your name. What was it? And how you ask, right? It's just something that's very casual, very nonchalant, and then you move on from it. As long as you're warm and kind and apologetic about it, everyone understands. It's not something that you need to be insecure about, nervous about, or keep coming back to like, oh man, I'm really sorry I forgot your name. That's just making it a way bigger deal than it is. And Jesus Christ, don't forget their name again. Don't forget their name again. So next time you're at a party and meeting tons of people, these 3 strategies can help you keep track of all those names. But name is just a start. We also need to be able to start conversations, join conversations. So this video breaks down the psychology of joining a group conversation, right? So that we can go from a name to actually connecting with someone. We'll talk soon.